Why did the Titans fire Brian Callahan? Where should I start? How about the stats of this year's Tennessee Titans offense? This year, the Titans offense, 13.8 points per game. Second worst in the NFL. That's 83 points through 6 games. That's the fewest in the franchise's history through 6 games dating back to 1985. Their rushing game, 81.8 rush yards per game. Second worst in the NFL. 150.5 pass yards per game. Second worst in the NFL. Their total yards was 232.2, worst in the NFL. Their yards per attempt passing, 4.5, worst in the NFL. Their completion percentage, 55%, worst in the NFL. Sacks, 25, worst in the NFL. 3 passing touchdowns, worst in the NFL. 28% on third downs, also worst in the NFL. Long story short, this is one of the worst offenses we've ever seen in the National Football League. Oh, and by the way, bro doesn't even know the rules of football like he demonstrated in week 1, not realizing that an elbow inbounds is the same as 2 feet. So again, you see with his actual team that his team lacked the understanding and discipline that it takes to play a good quality game of football. 6 most penalties in the NFL as well, tied for the 3rd most giveaways in football. This Tennessee Titans team was absolutely horrendous with Brian Callahan as the head coach. And now these stats are horrendous, but the results were just as bad. A 1-5 start to the season and a 4-19 overall record that saw the Titans get the number 1 overall pick last year. And by the way, with that 4-19 record, only Ken Wisenhunt has a worse record as a head coach for the Tennessee Titans than Brian Callahan at 3-20. And it's one thing to have a bad record like that, and teams can have bad records and still be competitive. We're kind of seeing that with the New Orleans Saints right now. These guys were not competitive whatsoever. They looked like easily the worst team in football this year again, and they were. Their only win this year is one of the luckiest wins in NFL history because it literally took the Cardinals giving them the football game on 3 separate occasions to win it. This team could have easily been 0-6, so you understand why Brian Callahan should have been fired. And honestly, we should have seen this incompetence from Brian Callahan coming from a mile away, considering before becoming the Tennessee Titans head coach, he spent the previous 5 seasons as the Cincinnati Bengals offensive coordinator, which isn't really considered a high-quality or disciplined organization or program being run in Cincinnati either. So if for some reason anybody was wondering why Brian Callahan was fired, I hope that helps. Anyways, in terms of what's left for the Tennessee Titans, senior offensive assistant Mike McCoy, you might remember McCoy as the head coach for the San Diego Chargers from 2013 to 2016. He's going to take over as the head coach, where he made the playoffs once, had a 27-37 record. So at least he has a little bit of experience, albeit a decade ago. To me, this gives Cam Ward at least a little bit of a chance in his last 11 games of his rookie year. Granted, firing Brian Callahan doesn't fix the offensive line, wide receiver room, tight end room, and running back room, all of which I would put in the bottom half or near the bottom of the league. But it does give the team some hope to turn around this year, and it gives a boost to this locker room. It gives some energy to this locker room that desperately needed it after looking just about as bad as any team can possibly look through 6 weeks. But I'm going to kick it to these guys. Guys, what do you think? What do you guys think about Brian Callahan getting fired? Is this the right decision, and what does it do for the Titans going forward?
You want to go, Joe? Because I mean,
this is just a battle-run organization. I mean, we know that, I said that they weren't as bad as some of these other organizations in another video. And, but when you realize kind of how they've done their firings, it hasn't made a lot of sense, right? So they fire the GM that came in with Mike Vrabel, bring in a new guy. Then they fire Mike Vrabel after, that guy sends out, A.J. Brown for pennies and obviously makes one of the worst wide receiver decisions we've ever seen. And then they bring in the new coach, Brian Callahan. Then they fire the GM, hire a new GM, and now we've fired the Titans. So they're just doing this lopsided thing. And we all know that what happens when you bring in a head coach and a GM, you want to bring them in together. You want to build that camaraderie together. And the Titans have failed to do that for the last, 5-6 years? So it's not a surprise that things aren't working well. You have clashing probably beliefs, clashing ideals in a system. Like you said, Brian Callahan we knew that was a bad coaching hire from the get-go. They never should have fired Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel was 2 years removed from a head coach of the year award, and you let him go. Why? He consistently performed with a lackluster offense. Ryan Tannehill, who we have seen is not a competent quarterback, went to multiple playoff runs under Mike Vrabel. Like, he knew how to get his guys ready. He knew how to get them, and you let him go. So now you're doing this whole thing. Enter Mike McCoy, who has 1 playoff win to his record, and it was one of the twilight years of Phillip Rivers in San Diego. And that's it. His best record was 9-7. He's only been a quarterback's coach. Now, granted, he's worked with some names, right? Peyton Manning's on that list. He's worked with Trevor Lawrence. He's worked with a lot of these guys. Philip Rivers is on that list. But Philip Rivers was good when he got him. Peyton Manning was already established when he worked with him. Trevor Lawrence didn't look that great and still hasn't looked that great. And now you're saying, oh, well, I have Cam Ward and I've worked with all these guys. It's like saying you put your name on the group project and that's all the work you did. Like, this isn't going to work. Like, Mike McCoy's not the answer. He's just the guy who's closest to fill in the spot. They're going to give him a look because he's been a head coach before. He does have a playoff win, but like I said, it wasn't him. They were 9-7 that year. They were a wild card team, and they did squeak out a win, but that was it. This is probably the worst case scenario. And I saw a stat. I think it was like of all the first round quarterbacks that were picked, dating back to like 2015 or whatever it was, 7 of them have seen their head coach fired in their first year. That's not a path for success. So Cam Ward went into a bad situation. You knew you were going to be bad. You should have accepted it. Now, you could have evaluated whether or not Brian Callahan was the answer at the end of the year. At least you would have given some sort of semblance of structure for the young kid. But you didn't do that. You brought him into a bad situation, which illustrated the offseason moves you've made in the past and everything else. And the only hope for Cam Ward is he finds somebody in the Mike Vrabel frame that came and helped out Drake May. But this isn't the year for that. You should have fired Brian Callahan in the offseason. You should have went to Ben Johnson and said, hey, Ben, we have the number 1 overall pick. The world's your oyster. Go get him. I don't know if there's a good answer for any head coach to come in here and help this kid out in this offseason. And this is why Cam Ward's tenure as a Tennessee Titan is going to be marred with just terrible gameplay, terrible outcomes, and a bad record.
Yeah, this next upcoming head coaching hire is maybe the most important one the Tennessee Titans have had in their history of their franchise, because I think all of us firmly believe Cam Ward is a talented enough quarterback that you can definitely win football games with him as your quarterback. And the problem is there's no structure there right now. So this upcoming head coaching hire is an extremely, extremely important hire for the Tennessee Titans going forward. But like you mentioned, Joe, they should have made this hire in the offseason. They should have fired Brian Callahan after last season, because last season was so terrible, and obviously he made Will Levis probably look way worse than Will Levis really is. But Sammy, this is your boy right here, apparently, even though I believe that you gave up on him. This is your boy right here in Cam Ward and the Tennessee Titans. So tell us what you think, man. Was Brian Callahan being fired justified, and what does this mean for the Titans going forward?
He's freed. He's free, and I believe that this is something that's going to help Cam Ward's future. Look, the tenure of Brian Callahan was actually a blessing in disguise, because if they kept Mike Vrabel, they wouldn't have Cam Ward on their team, their future savior. So for that, thank you, Mr. Callahan. You can pack your bags. This entire head coaching search, I think, is going to last all the way until the offseason. So I'd rather not discuss that, and I'd rather talk about something that happened that really, really, like, sort of was the writing on the wall. And that was when Brian Callahan decided, I'm going to give up play calling duties and give it to my QB coach. I think after that, we all agree it was done. Like, there was nothing Brian Callahan, like, there's no way the ownership saw that and was like, okay, like, this guy, we have no confidence anymore. For the Titans, it's all about, like, rebuilding with a better voice. This might be a bit of a hot take, man. I think Brian Flores would thrive in a situation like Tennessee right now. Look, you already have the QB. You already have it. I don't think you need to worry about that. But the truth is we need Brian Flores to take a backseat when it comes to the offensive stuff and let the offense come from, like, hire some sort of genius. All right. It could be a guy under Kyle Shanahan, right? It could be a guy under maybe Sean McVay. If you want to make him the head coach, that's fine too. But I honestly think what did not help at all was the fact that the defense of the Tennessee Titans also wasn't very good. So you had one of the worst offenses in football history. On top of that, one of the defense that really isn't good either. Look, a really good defense can still win you some games. For the Titans, it was not even close, because not only was their offense bad, their defense was just as bad as well. Well, not just as bad, but bad as well. Also, look, you got to get rid of the GM. There was a reason Mike Vrabel was very open about saying, I don't want that guy. I forgot his name. Let me look up his name real quick. Carthen. There you go. Ran Carthen. That doesn't even sound like a good general manager name. No disrespect to your family tree or whatever. Ran Carthen has been terrible. Okay. Drafting, acquiring wide receivers. I mean, I believe he was the guy that was responsible for trading away A.J. Brown. And what ended up happening was A.J. Brown left, and they thought they had somebody in Treylon Burks, and guess how that turned out? Absolutely nothing. So it's not just Brian Callahan that they got to get rid of. It's Rand Carthon as well. He's got to go. That organization as a whole, Joe, we mentioned it not being the worst organization in the league. After further thought, them firing Mike Vrabel, who's probably going to lead, who's probably their best coach in the franchise's history, at least one of the best coaches in the franchise's history. You fire him because you disagree with whatever kind of philosophy and direction he's taking you. With all due respect to ownership, this man is winning you football games. He is taking you to AFC Championship games. How in the world are you not okay with the direction the team is going? And it was you and your GM that you picked that traded away your best wide receiver in franchise history. It was your GM. Yours. So, with that being said, let me calm down. I'm sorry. It just makes me upset when I see bad organizations make bad moves. Believe me. I think Brian Flores should be considered, but anybody from the Sean McVay tree, anybody from the Kyle Shanahan tree, I want to see a season fully play out before I really scope into any like real candidates. But overall, I think Brian Flores should be one of the top of the list. And then as the season goes on, I'm going to like kind of round out the list a little bit more.
Yeah, going back to your point about the Titans organization maybe being the worst in football, Sammy, I went back and looked at their first-round picks since 2017. I'm just going to list them for you. Corey Davis, 5th overall. Adoree Jackson, 18th overall. Rashaan Evans, 22nd overall. Jeffrey Simmons, 19th overall. Good pick. And then it was Isaiah Wilson. If you remember Isaiah Wilson, he played one game and then never played in the NFL again. 29th overall. Caleb Farley couldn't stay healthy in 2021. Treylon Burks in 2022. And then Skoronski and Latham and Cam Ward were the last 3. So again, of those picks, really none of them besides Jeffrey Simmons have hit so far. I mean, obviously we think Cam Ward's going to hit. Looks like Latham and Skoronski are continuing to improve, but they haven't really hit as well either. So again, it's like, what have you really done as an organization to help out anybody really with the draft capital that you've been getting? As far as Brian Callahan goes, bro, you're never getting another NFL head coaching job again. You ruined your opportunity. You're probably gonna have to wait a long time to get an NFL offensive coordinator job. I would recommend going to college and then trying to work your way back up because you ain't getting another NFL job soon. And normally, like in these situations, I'm normally the guy like, well, listen, who are they going to hire? But I don't give a single shit who they hire. It's way better than Brian Callahan because he was absolutely atrocious. However, real quick, there's one thing that makes me nervous about the Tennessee Titans. And I'm a Patriots fan. Joe, you're a Patriots fan. Who do the Patriots play this week, Joe?
Tennessee Titans.
The Tennessee Titans, and it's Mike Vrabel's return to Tennessee. He and the whole team are going to want revenge on the Titans for doing them dirty, and I love that. But we see an interim head coach first game bump a lot of the time because of that like new energy that this team gets from the interim head coach. Since 2010, interim head coaches are 19 and 14 in their debuts. And the notable ones that stick out in my head are Antonio Pierce with the Raiders in 2023 when they won by 3 touchdowns versus the Giants. And then if you remember Jeff Saturday, when everyone was like, oh my God, why is Jeff Saturday getting a head coaching job? And eventually, and obviously it didn't work out well for him in the end, but his first game, they won against the Raiders in 2022. So like I said, it doesn't always lead to like long-term season success, but it seems like an interim head coach in week 1 always just like bumps up the sliders 10. Like every single slider for the team is bumped up 10 because they have a new interim head coach. And that makes me a little bit nervous about my Patriots, but you know, that's a different subject for a different day. But the whole point of this video is Brian Callahan, you suck. You're a terrible head coach. You're awful. And the Tennessee Titans are going to be much better off without you.
This has been Between the Uprights. Football is life. The rest is just details.